Welcome everyone. We are live with our new episode of Last Man Standing podcast, and for everyone who's watching us live, although I'm not sure how many people are watching us live because I haven't really promoted. So let me tell you what really is going on right now that is so interesting. So we're basically live, and we have a video feed, like a camera or whatever you want to consider that on YouTube. Of course, the podcast will continue to be uploaded on Spotify and on all kinds of and on whatever platform you listen to. By the way, thank you for all the support um, on Spotify, on iTunes, especially from my listeners on iPhones and all Overcast, which has drew the majority of my audience, and I'm very thankful for that. By the way, and I'm gonna try to keep it at least one show a week, something that I haven't been able to do in about 3 weeks. I think this is our first show in 3 weeks. It's now December the 1st. Is going to be December the 2nd when you listen to it. If you're watching it live, it's obviously December the 1st. It's about 4:20 p.m. Eastern time, 11:20 in the evening here in Bulgaria. 4:20 on the East Coast, United States. 9:20 in the United Kingdom. So this is the channel where I'm gonna upload the bulk, where I'm gonna stream it basically, because I cannot with the stream platform that I have. I cannot pretty much record it, but here I'm gonna upload the whole thing of it about it, and then I'm going to cut into segments, which I'm gonna put on as videos. This is basically the channel where I usually upload things that are related to my baseball website. So this is very special, to be honest. This is website called Home Run BG, like BG like Bulgaria, home run, like the thing that scores 4 bases, a run in baseball. Basically what I mean. And this is something that basically it started my career in sports writing or sports journalism. It was a website that I founded in 2017. 2017 July, in the month of July. So it ran for 3 years, and I did a pretty good job of managing it on my own until it was this February that it actually had some technical problems, and I've had a conversation with my host, but I haven't been able to fix it yet, and hopefully that will happen in the near future. But you can expect that to happen pretty soon. So pretty much for everybody who's watching this as a video on my on this account, Home Run BG, be sure to, if you're from Bulgaria, of course, because it's the first baseball website in Bulgaria, first specialized baseball website in Bulgaria. Make sure to go check it out as well. Make sure to follow it once you're gonna be notified. You're gonna know from the show or from another source. You're gonna know when we get the site back up running. But I'm gonna upload the show on the same channel, because I think that the audience is similar, and it's gonna bring some versatility, some interesting versatility to the channel of having videos on Bulgarian and sports highlights, as well as this podcast in English, which has international audience. Like most of my audience is from the United States, 92% of it, and it can. I think it has the potential to draw if I promote my podcasts and my more of my videos overall. And I'm gonna do that heavily on Facebook, mostly because this is where I have the opportunity of doing that. But yeah, this is basically for everybody who's watching the video feed, the live feed. We're gonna have a lot more of this. We're gonna have like highlight videos, or like they're just gonna be videos. So you have the opportunity of watching this live, not just listening to it every Sunday. But yeah, the main thing remains Sundays, 2 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Noon Pacific, 9 p.m. Bulgarian time, 7 o'clock in the United Kingdom. So basically, we're back with another edition. When everybody who's watching this for the first time, you know what we do here. We talk about a lot of sports, mostly American sports, Australian sports, some of it, and but basically we focus on the entrepreneurial side, on the business side of it. And I'm gonna have to turn my right. Uh, all right. Let's talk about the entrepreneurial side and try to do really. I've talked about a lot about ratings, a lot about TV deals, and a lot about the business, the organizational side of it, at least from the standpoint of a person who kind of hasn't worked in. I mean, I've been a sports writer for the past 3 years. I haven't worked in sports management. In fact, I'm going to study sports management next year when I'm in university. So this is when you can expect the podcast to be even more interesting. But I have a lot of things to say until then, from both this, which I have been very, very focused on for the past year, and so we have a lot about these things. By the way, on today's show, you can see that by the title of the video, which I'm gonna explain in a little bit. It's basically we focus on the business side and on the television side of the sport which I am focused on. These are NFL, Major League Baseball, American sports overall. This is the theme here, as well as professional wrestling, Australian sports, mostly AFL and NRL. Um, Talked about a little bit about politics into sports, although I try to keep it out of here. I try to be more of the business side on the TV side, to be honest. Although we have more of it here as well today. Yeah, this is basically it for everybody who's watching this for the first time. And we have, as I said, 3 weeks since our last show, and there's some things that happened during that time. I don't think I'm going to say that we're going to have an NFL segment today, but I'm going to keep the NFL ratings for 1 week out of the shelf, out of the plan, because I think that right now nothing much really, not much really changing, because the NFL isn't all that heavy on protesting and on BLM and on being a social justice shithole. I said that word. I said a word. I tried. I said that I wasn't gonna say that, but I said it. And their ratings have been neither plummeting nor thriving. They've been so for a better part of the year, especially in the second half of the year. And now things have sparked. With the protests during the national anthem have starting to increase. You saw a lot of players from both the Texans and the Lions very disgusting on the first game in Ford Field on Thanksgiving. So we can expect, if that continues, it's going to be pretty interesting how ratings are going to be impacted probably the same way they were impacted back in 2017. But nothing has really happened in the 3 weeks leading up to that Thanksgiving week. So it was basically the direction was basically the same as it was when I recorded our last show. So I'm gonna keep it. So I'm gonna keep that out of the way for today's show, because we have a lot more coming. But we're gonna start with some wrestling, and as you know, here we have a little bit of a. It's not a game, obviously. It's more like a competition. Well, not really a competition as well, but pretty much what I'm doing is grading all 5 shows, the 5 top shows. Although there are 2 shows I think that don't deserve to be called top shows at the moment. That's how bad they are. And in the end of the year, whatever show has a better average score, or in the case of the number of shows not being even, within the between the 5 shows. In the case of the better average score, and if we have even number uneven, if we have even number, we're gonna have the total score. If you don't have the same number of shows, we're gonna have average score. That's what I was trying to say. So we're grading Dynamite, NXT, SmackDown, Impact, and Raw, and from the things that I've watched, I haven't been watched. I've been able to watch last week's NXT. Obviously, Impact this week is not rated. It's not aired, and I'm gonna watch Raw after after I'm done with this show. But the rest I'm gonna show you right now before we jump into everything that happened in the past 3 weeks after our last show. If I figure out how to share those. For those listening to the show on Spotify, I'm gonna just say. Yes, I think you're able to see it. Basically, we have the past 3 weeks. I think this is the period which we have not covered here on the show, the period in which AEW has been, for the better part, flawless, especially that 8.5 in week 4. This was, I think, the show main evented by Kenny Omega versus Penta El Zero Miedo. The rest, it hasn't really gone out of his way. It has kept his format, and it may seem like for a show so brilliant that it's the best show right now going, the company that is arguably on its way as being the best right now. It seems like I'm not saying anything more than just praising its format and the fact that it has a lot more wrestling than any of the other 4 shows, perhaps combined, if you don't count NXT, of course. And it may seem repetitive, but that is the truth, really. AEW has been very consistent in providing a lot of wrestling on its shows. I think it has about 5 or 6 matches on every show. And most of their matches are not under 10 minutes unless it's a squash. But also, sometimes you have to have squash matches. And AEW is doing a great job keeping their squash matches on dark, so that they have most of their good matches on Dynamite, which has allowed them to have great ratings, to have events on Dynamite, and instead of having one pay-per-view every month, which is definitely very expensive to produce. And if you're not brilliant, you're gonna struggle to turn a profit in your first couple of years. Let's not forget that in about, I think, exactly a month from today, AEW will be turning exactly 2 years. 2 years after the creation of the company. And those 2 years is pretty difficult to survive if you have to produce a very expensive pay-per-view and not earn anything. Not that Dynamite is all that cheap to produce, but the pay-per-view is a whole other thing. And this also draws anticipation for your pay-per-views. If your shows have great matches, you're gonna put even better matches on those big 4 pay-per-views, and the interest towards them is even bigger. And so they draw a lot of people, and AEW has drawn great pay-per-view buy figures for their first 8 pay-per-views. I think no, they've had 6 pay-per-views. I think no, they had 7 pay-per-views, and they've since All Out last year, I think in almost every show they've had about 100,000 pay-per-view buys, which is tremendous for a startup company which has about 3 or 4 guys that were big names in big wrestling before they came to AEW. The guys that are draws. The only guys that are draws to the wide audience, to the basic public, are Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley, unless it's some kid that doesn't know that Jon Moxley is Dean Ambrose from WWE. because there are such people. There are also casuals. They don't have to be kids that don't really that, like they watch it. They actually watch it a lot, but the more you think about it, you understand that they don't actually watch every show. Never mind. It's pretty. Nothing I can say too much about those. That like AW is very consistent, and NXT is getting very difficult for it to stay in the competition, because it is almost a one-way competition here. NXT, the past two shows were kind of bad. Johnny Gargano dropping the championship is definitely not good. It was because it was not a good match. Regular so that regular of a change in championships is really devalues the whole point of the championship, especially if it's a number two championship. Although doing that with the number one championship is a lot more destructive. Reference to David Arquette, not just David Arquette, the whole WCW championship after 1997, 97 to 2001, of course. And from those two shows, I hope you're seeing I hope it's not boogie or something like that. Or okay, I'm gonna stay with that way because I'm not sure if it's okay. Or I'm gonna do it. Those shows, the only good match was Rhea Ripley and Io Shirai, and it seems like they got because I've mentioned that regularly. They don't have roster depth. It almost seems like I'm talking about NFL right now. They don't have roster depth, and because they don't have roster depth, they fall. Even without talking about the competition with AW, but still, when you're in a ratings battle, as strange as it seems for NXT, the WWE's number 3 brand, pretty much. Although in quality it's number 1, but it's number 3 in the revenue that it drives in for the company. You have to produce great matches, but also have to produce different matches, like with different competitors. And they had a Halloween Havoc was pretty good, but then Cameron Grimes and some of the guys on NXT I don't know right now, but I'm just looking at the format. I value that a lot more than like it's kind of a lot more important than the characters, because characters need to be very simple. They need to look a lot more like competitors than they need to look like it's in some kind of a movie. That's why I don't know some of the guys there, and also because I watch Dynamite every Wednesday. Not because I'm biased, because I have to watch one of those things. I mean, I cannot watch both. If I try to watch both, I would end up not watching either. I've tried it with football games. Back when I didn't know about Red Zone, I tried to watch a couple of games at the same time, and guess what? I ended up not understanding what happened in any of those games. And I've tried with baseball games where there is no red zone, and I understand nothing. So I cannot watch both. It's not due to any kind of bias. Let's move on. SmackDown is not too good. And I was almost able, if I recorded this a couple of weeks ago, I would say that it's almost an enjoyable show, because they actually had a couple of good matches, but like you see they're declining. The Seth Rollins, the whole Rey Mysterio storyline actually is very uninteresting. And again, the format is very unappealing. It's always has been for the WWE main roster probably since 1993, and that will always be my opinion until they fix it. I don't care if it's 1993 or 2020, because the market liked more matches and a match main event, both in 1997, for example, and in 2020. So when you have shows that start with a promo and end with a promo, this is not good. This avidly isn't good. You can see the ratings. You see it. Raw is drawing under 1.5 million. SmackDown is barely keeping themselves at the 2 million mark, but that is while they are on broadcast television. A couple of years ago, they were drawing 3 million on USA Network on cable, and the format hasn't improved. It has declined. Obviously, it has declined in quality. You can see that right now SmackDown actually has a better average grade than NXT. That is pending the last episode of NXT. So yeah, I would expect that um, to increase unless it actually gets less than 7.5. I think that way it might not increase. Oh no, it will increase. It will increase either way. The only way it will increase is if it get less than 0.5. But SmackDown for a while was show that had a better wrestling. Right now, I don't think that it is that way. And yeah, Roman Reigns as a champion is very good right now. As a draw, overall as a draw, because he's a draw because he became a baby face, not really because he was talented, because of like because of what happened to him in his real life. Let's just put it that way. But he became a heel. He became interesting, and now both things are going for him, and he's very interesting. And they actually are able, SmackDown kind of puts some of its important matches on SmackDown. It like operates a little bit like Dynamite, but they have basically, but it's not like it's not even close to quality, but at least that aspect they have going. But they still have monthly pay-per-views, which they bring over exposure and they make the whole show pretty bad. And now we're gonna get to Raw. We're gonna talk about this even more avidly. But let's talk about Impact. How much has Impact fallen off? 7 in week 1, 7.5 in week 2, and now it's 5.5. It was the worst show this week by far. I don't think NXT is gonna be bad from the things I saw. So this was the worst show of the week, and it was very bad. They made Hornswoggle came out as AJ Styles, and he wrestled Ethan Page, one of the best technical wrestlers in one of the best tag teams in Impact, and he beat him. I don't want to sound like Brian Alvarez ranting, but this is not what the market wants to watch. The main event was quite good, but again, they spent too much time. They spent too much time on out of the ring segments. I would instead spend them on interviews, if anything. But they're really spending them time. They have that storyline with John E. Bravo where he was shot at a wedding. Now they're trying to find who shot him, which is kind of an attitude era storyline, and I'm not saying this in a good way. I'm saying this in a bad way. And just to give you an example of what happened over the last show, but to give you like real details, I'll have to go back to the last show, but using cage match. But of course, I'll have to see the promotion, because why the f not? I'm doing a great job not swearing on those shows, because believe me, it is definitely not that way in real life. I'm definitely not that calm, at least when I want to swear. So Crazy Steve was masked as Suicide, and he beat the X Division champion Raheem Raju in a 5-minute match. Falaba defeated Sean Daivari in a disqualification 35 seconds. Only Rich Swan and Cam Shamrock was half good. This is a very bad episode. I don't need to have watched it in full to know that it was a bad show. And I think overall, since Slammiversary, the last show, like it almost seemed like they've also changed their format. The last show of the last show of Impact with the more lengthy matches and more focus on the wrestling, fewer um, backstage segments was probably the the Impact after Slammiversary. It should be this. It should have been this when the Motor City Machine Guns won the tag team championships. But now last week was terrible. Not one good match considering that Cam Shamrock and Rich Swann was half good. And the women's division, they have a limited options. They usually have great matches, and that this is mostly because they don't make you fall asleep during because they don't really participate in many of those backstage or out of location uh, segments. This is why also the world title is good. The world, if anything, is gonna help Impact not fall into the abyss again. It's having a strong world title. But what they've done since Slammiversary is definitely not that way. You have a face champion who was a draw in Eddie Edwards, and you have 1 month later he lost it to Eric Young, and Eric Young 1 month later lost it to Rich Swann. You're not doing any kind of great job. Um, you're not doing a great job making your title prestigious, and but that way you're gonna draw less for your pay-per-views, which are only two per year. Only two per year. If you devalue your championship, you're gonna lose a lot of money from this, from the pay-per-views and overall, because of your shows, because you have a lot less exposure. AXS is actually not in Nielsen, so they don't release ratings. So it's very difficult for any to get any sponsors in any kind of credible way for Impact in order to capitalize on even ratings grow, and ratings grow would not be very clear because ratings are very hard to come by. And even if you're backstage, they're a lot less credible than not that they're a lot less credible. Of course, they have the right numbers. They are rather the fact that they're not in Nielsen is less. It makes it less credible, of course. And Raw was kind of interesting this week because Raw had two 20-minute matches, something that I have never expected from Raw. So I gave it a 7. This is the first time he's gone over the 5.5 mark. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it, but it's pretty good, and it set up a Drew McIntyre and AJ Styles match at TLC. So that was the best Raw I've seen this year. Still had its flaws. 3-hour format. Almost any 3-hour show, 3-hour weekly show will have a lot of flaws. And the fact that he put 20-minute matches doesn't mean that you're doing yourself a favor doing putting 20-minute matches every week. But if you don't put lengthy matches, you have to put a lot of matches, too many matches. So the event factor will be gone. It's much easier with 1 or 2-hour shows. And also, it's pretty difficult to keep your ratings higher, which would not help you capitalize even on that extra hour you have compared to the other shows. Like, this is literally the only benefit for Raw right now, is that extra hour drives in extra revenue. This is pretty much AEW leads by 8 over NXT, pending the last week's NXT and this week's Raw. And of course, tonight at 8 o'clock, for those watching us live, tonight 8 o'clock, Impact Live on AXS. Before we move out of the wrestling topic, I'm gonna close that. I'm gonna stop my screen sharing. That's why I'm gonna close that. Before I move out, 30 minutes. Well, I was hoping that would be a 1 hour broadcast, but whatever. I'm gonna put that here. We're gonna talk about AW Winter is coming in just a moment. But first, we're gonna talk about AW Full Gear Survivor Series. First off, by seeing how overbooked the card is, I didn't have time to watch this because it was on a couple of years ago on the Saturday. I think I watched Chiefs and Raiders. It was not Chiefs and Raiders. It was the previous Sunday night football game, whatever. And I haven't watched Survivor Series. Um, but we from the business side of it, um, except for decisions which might be profitable or make for or result in losses financial, which cannot be a guarantee because we should do an outcome based analysis, something that we cannot do financially with AW or rating, not ratings wise, but pay per view buys, promotion from the standpoint of promotion for WWE, because the number of buys for pay per view is actually not driven by how sensational a pay per view is. It's driven by, well, mostly every event, the interest towards it is driven by the way it's promoted. And in wrestling, you use your weekly shows to promote your pay per view. So it's completely dependent on the way it's built, mostly on the card, but also towards the storylines, if they're actually appealing to people. And I would make the case that WWE's pay per views would be on the downturn in terms of pay per view buys compared to AW, because AW's show is so good and their storylines are a lot more simpler and in that way better. And big events on the shows also contribute to those storylines. And the cards are a lot better. They're also, the wrestlers there, a lot more in sync with the modern style of wrestling that the market wants. And yet we cannot make those arguments because we cannot say how many people watch the WWE pay-per-views. That would be very vital, wouldn't it? Okay, tickets don't matter because everything's mostly full. And I would argue that if AW didn't make mistakes, which they have not made, that right now, if there was no Kofefe, I'm talking about Corona, both would have full house for almost any Dynamite and pay-per-view. So this is not something we compare them. Obviously, it's pay-per-view buys. It's pay-per-view buys because pay-per-views are the biggest generator of revenue. Of course, if you make them right, of course, and of course, also the TV ad revenue. This is also, which is driven by the key demo, not by viewership. We've been told that numerous times. But we cannot make those comparisons because we cannot actually know how many people from WWE Network who subscribe to the WWE Network watch a particular pay-per-view. That's a thing that I think has not been released by any media, by any wrestling media. Pardon, by any wrestling media, and I think I've only seen a couple of times. The only time I heard statistics from WWE Network viewership were when WWE made the case about how NXT UK was the most watched show on their network out of the UK. I think that's what it was. And we cannot make those, but from seeing how overbooked the Survivor Series card was, I don't think anything there is anything important I've missed. But Full Gear is a lot interesting, and the information surrounding it is a lot interesting because in the time that has passed since we had our last show, there also the buys number also came out. It's about 100,000 according to Wrestling Observer newsletter. It was reportedly down compared to All Out or Double or Nothing, but about 10,000 more than Full Gear 2019, which was not during the time of a pandemic. So this. I thought it was obviously most of their shows are very well promoted. Because you had that big storyline with Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, would build up to an incredible match, and almost everything was very well promoted. Also, they had that huge Young Bucks and FTR, and I would say that for the number of buys, if the circumstances were the same, would have been disappointing. But but Double or Nothing was at a time when AW had no competition because everything was canceled. Everything sports wise was canceled. Bear in mind, those are on Sundays, on Saturdays. The shows are on Saturdays. In May there was nothing. Everything was canceled. They had absolutely no competition during the time. The first thing I thought when I heard about Full Gear draws being slightly down is because there is the first thing I thought was mostly because I didn't watch it myself because I chose to watch college football because it has more value I don't know if it has more value, but because it's longer, the game is longer. Or actually, when I watched the full pay-per-view, I realized that the game might have not been longer because the pay-per-view was almost 4 hours, and a college football game is about 4 hours as well. It was the same length. I chose to watch college football. I watched it taped, Full Gear. And if anything, the increase over last year is what matters. People argue about all these people at home, but all those people at home have all the things to watch. It's not like okay, AW would draw maybe 20,000, but you see the ratings from most shows haven't increased haven't increased during lockdowns, and they have increased in where they have increased with the speed that they were previously increasing. For example, AFL ratings in Australia were increasing long before they were increasing last year. They had the same ratings. They had increased last year, and they had another increase this year in 2020. It was the same with the grand final. Okay, the grand final was actually one of the most watched. The grand final was actually a record high, but it was record high I think the previous year. In the NRL, which we're going to talk about in a bit, it was almost the same ratings as last year, despite all those people at home. And in Australia, those 10,000, for example, if 10,000 who are not at the stadium, they make a difference, because in Australia the games don't draw millions of viewers. And the NRL ratings, if I can find the article, I've opened it somewhere. It was up 0.35%. Matches on Channel 9 went down 4% in viewership. first 20 rounds of 2019. But I'm trying to find my what my assumption is that um, my assumption is if anywhere across the board there is an increase, that increase is not by it's by a lot more than 10,000 people. But most of those places, there it's down 0.35%. If you break it down compared game by game, it might end up being less than 10,000 again. So what that shows you, a lot of the people who watch it on TV are casual fans. They watch mostly because it's popular, um, and they're not fans who watch every game of it. So what that means, it means that all those people who watch it on the stadium are not guaranteed to watch it. Um, who go to the stadium are not the same people are not guaranteed to watch it on television. This is very similar to the way that when there is no NXT on a Wednesday, you don't see 1.4 million viewers for AW Dynamite, despite the fact that AW Dynamite draws about 700,000, and the NXT also draws 700,000. Rarely these days, but whatever. It was that way. That was the case this week. So a lot of those people are casuals. And what about? I've talked about with friends of mine. Let's put it that way. They cannot understand why sometimes when I talk about American sports, the focus is on like the focus in European sports and the promotion of European sports, or at least here in Bulgaria, is that you only talk about the people who watch that particular sport. You often would hear that if of those people don't watch that sport, you should not even make an effort to draw them in. It is the exact different way with anything, because actually you have competition, and competition things thrive, and all they have to promote themselves in a way that they actually appeal to the casual audience. They have to actually promote as if they are entertainment, just like anything else on television. In the same way that news are trying to be the news they should not be trying to be, but they try to be to some extent entertaining. Because they also have to survive, although they would be a lot less entertaining if they actually took their job seriously. That's why that is the reason why most of those are collapsing. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. But this is for another this is a topic for another time. So if anything, you should compare it based on the fact that it was around that time last year, the same kind of competition. It was kind of stronger competition last year, because you actually have people at the stadiums. You had interconference matchups in college football, and at that time you also had NBA and NHL. But considering that this is strong, I would say that this is still an increase. This is still an increase, and it reflects how better it was promoted. And if anything, you should not compare it to Double or Nothing, because Double or Nothing had no competition. If anything, it's up. If anything, you should compare it to Full Gear 2019. The fact that it's up compared to that. So I think that shows that promoting the show has done them some great job. We're gonna move down now out of wrestling. Next week you're gonna hear more about Major League Wrestling's return. Which it's also a lot of interesting things to say there, because they've also kept their format, but they don't have any kind of audience. but it looking like there are gonna be some interesting things happening in there, and also on the media side. Also, we're gonna move out of it. We're gonna turn to the National Rugby League in Australia. Um, for something that happened earlier this year. It happened around the time of the finish of the regular season, I think. NRL's TV deal. They signed a new TV deal through the 2027 season, worth about more than $2 billion, which seems like it's an overvaluation. And for a long time, we've talked about how most of this is not gonna it's not gonna be here in the way that, like, it's not gonna be with the value of which it was, because sports salaries and sports TV deals will be a lot less valued, cheaper. In other words, not really cheaper, but less worthy, less valuable, because like athletes will get less, but teams and organizations will have less spending power. That is because of the crisis, of course, which is upcoming, and it seems inevitable, because they're not even making, in some places, not even making an effort to stop the lockdowns. By that time, I don't think anybody who, like me, was furious in June, despite despite how furious I or anybody was in June. I don't think even that kind of people, like us and me, thought that we would be in this situation in December. It's December the 1st, and Bulgaria is in lockdown. UK, okay, UK, something happened today. I'm going to talk about it in the end of the show, but France is in a lockdown. All of Europe is in a lockdown, and half of America is in a lockdown. And South Australia initiated a lockdown after they had 0 cases on 20,000 tests in the span of 48 hours. This is not anything that has to do with science. So this only makes the projections worse and the estimates worse. It's only going to be less growth. And growth is going to become worse, and like, where there is entrepreneurial opportunities, these are the countries that obviously are gonna save themselves in any industry, and sports is no different. A friend of mine, when we were talking about American sports, so yeah, this didn't really. We weren't talking about American sports, we're talking about European sports, but there it's not even possible, especially in football, where there is literally a rule by FIFA that countries that it's against the law to create a football league which is out of this federations in countries that have their federation be a member of FIFA. I would like to check this up again in order to be correct, but if this is true, this is state monopoly in the industry of football, in the business of football, and this is going to be very bad for them. Obviously, there have been exceptions. I think in India there was a league that wasn't allowed to compete, obviously, with the federations league, but almost everywhere the league was forced to engage in a hierarchy where they are by rule on a smaller level. They're a smaller level division, lower level division than another league, which actually doesn't allow them to compete. This was the case with the North American Soccer League in the United States, where the United States Soccer Federation forced them to become the Division II league. Basically, it didn't allow them to compete, and they were forced to become The number two league, they had to cancel. Then they canceled their next season because something like protest or something like that. It was literally because of that. It might have been because of the revenue which they lost. It might have been because of financial losses caused by this move by the United States Soccer Federation. Might have been because of protests, but they missed their next season. They missed their current season because of COVID, and they're probably not going to return. But this is I think everybody should be um, everybody should be uh, fierce about it. Everybody should be angry about it. But the fact of the matter is that the media is the sports media is very leaning to the left, like extremely. To expect that sports media could be leaning so much to the left is actually beyond the realm of reality. I would not expect. This doesn't make any kind of sense for them. But the fact that they've always been a little bit left wing. Let's get back to the NRL. Considering that the NRL is probably gonna lose let's put it, market cap is gonna decrease. Its growth will be wiped out, or at least that is if they don't. If the market is free and it's a level playing field, it would be that way everywhere. I mean, the NFL literally wouldn't have been the big dominant business that it is today if it didn't have politicians in their back pockets. They screw taxpayers by having left-wing politicians, or not always left-wing politicians. The politicians from both parties have done that. But they're having greedy politicians who were trying to buy votes for them to be reelected by spending taxpayers' money on a stadium. And if that never happened, if cities didn't give taxpayers money to teams, you would see there would be a lot of leagues, all of which would be a lot smaller than the NFL is right now, or at least their growth would be driven by actually being high quality, giving people high quality product. But you will see a lot more competition with a lot smaller leagues, and people would have a choice, and the product would be a lot more interesting. The football would be a lot more interesting. That is if teams didn't have the politicians in their back pockets. If it was that way, the NRL, I think, is probably among the leagues among the sports in Australia, sport league in Australia, with the worst future ahead. But obviously, Nine and Foxtel have different opinion of that, because, as I said, they spent more than $2 billion on a deal, on a 7-year deal. Their previous deal was through 2022, so this is basically a 5-year extension. And this is after 2 straight years of decline during the regular season. It's also after 3 straight seasons with decreases in ratings. In the grand final, last year's it was that 2009 grand final between the Sydney Roosters and the Canberra Raiders on Channel 9 had a 5 Sydney metro audience of 1.8 million, which is the lowest on record dating back to 2003. And I don't really have as positive of an opinion as my colleagues from adnews.com.au have about. It does the same good things. Okay, let's say that article from Ad News, because to the extent of which that NRL is probably one of the top 4 things in terms of drawing power on television. Probably my concerns are towards the NRL, not towards the television, not towards the TV company. Uh, it's gonna affect. It's mostly gonna affect leaks, because even before, when the bubble was at its highest, and when we saw the current the current expensive deals be signed, those it would be, maybe it would be more difficult for companies to have to swallow one for something that is not dominant. But NRL is probably among the top five things on television in Australia, alongside the AFL, news, and other things that I don't know about. I don't know nearly as much about Australian television landscape as I know about the American television landscape. Just a couple of things that we want to touch on. But before that, so 5-year extension worth $2 billion. Their previous one, hold up, if I can find it, of course. The previous one was worth 1.1 billion. This is no, this 1.8 billion, which is 70% higher than the previous rights. I think it doesn't add, the new deal doesn't add any kind of games for Channel 9. So a slight increase of $200 million. So what we can expect from the next deal? Will there be, the most interesting question, because of the position that Kyle has in Australia, Kyle Sports, will there be, what would be the online role? I don't think that even in 2027 companies or leagues will be even closer to what Sports Pro Media has described as the future of pro sports TV deals, which basically will be most things will be online. It will be non-exclusive, and they will be in the same principle of which France, for example, sells its rights to multiple streaming platforms. For example, Netflix, and Comcast, and whatever else out there. What was it from Comcast? I don't remember. Basically, the future will be in non-exclusive footage, non-exclusive content. But about sports, the best I see. First off, I don't know how in Australia, to be honest, it might be, because in Australia it might be an increase. It's not going to be even slightly as big of a crisis as it's going to be in Western Europe, but probably in Eastern Europe where I live, and in America, in democratic states. But when those democratic states increase the debt, you don't know what a democratic federal government might want to demand from the Republican states. This is too forward in the future. Australia's not going to be nearly as not going to suffer nearly as much. So it might be. I would have said it's not going to be. It's going to be a decrease, but it's not going to be because of it's not going to be because of the crisis. It's going to be because of ratings, because ratings are not going well. It might be a combination of maybe the product not being all that good. Mostly the teams from some of the big markets not being that good. And also a combination of that and people stopping watching television on the television sets, obviously going online. But the best thing I see right now, with something non-exclusive, is keeping most of your things on the tele. Maybe have a restricted number, very limited number of games on something like Kyo or something like that. But still, here is the deal: those online platforms are still don't have nearly as big of an audience. Like we have seen the we have seen people go online at incredible rates, and still, even not even 15% not even less than 15% would be the audience of an online game compared to the television audience. Uh, their financial capabilities might grow, um, because of their online, and because people are going online. That's what the market wants. But I don't see. I don't think any league should be too quick into going from into going into relying on online platforms, because you obviously you don't only rely from the deal given to you by the deal that you have signed with the that platform. You also rely on ad revenue, of course. You also rely on ad revenue, and you're gonna there's it's gonna be like a huge drop. No, I cannot imagine that 500,000 people are gonna watch this. Like, want to watch our NRL game even in 2027. Talking about non exclusive coverage, it's pretty difficult for unless there's different ads on every platform. If you're gonna be live, if the deals are live, if you are putting it on a couple of different platforms, um, there is pretty difficult to have those ad companies pay to a couple of platforms. They for the league to be profitable as well. But overall, they're going to lose ratings, they're going to lose viewership, and they're going to lose ad revenue because of that, because of the ad companies, they still value viewership, and there is no way, even in 2027, um, that that it's gonna reach what rugby league now draws on TV on Channel 9 and on Foxtel. The length, depending on the value, it's gonna it depends on the value. Obviously, most of the deals are long term. Most of the deals are very long, for a long period of time. So I'd probably guess it would be kind of long. I said, but we already talked about ratings. They are not in a good spot. They're definitely not in a good spot. It's still one of the most important assets as a drawing for as a something drawing ratings. So I would say that nine will continue valuing it just as much as it already had, if it's at the top. And in reality, the bubble could the bubble will only explode when sports are when those sporting leagues are defeated by another form of entertainment for their places in those the place of dominance on Australian television. This will be when companies will start giving them less money, and that might not happen. Okay, that has a lot more chance to happen in 2027 than for the deal to be restricted due to the crisis. At least when we're talking about Australia. But it will be a lot less positive than it is with the AFL, That is for sure. And I would say a great deal for the NRL to get a long-term deal at a time where, for the past 3 weeks, for the past 3 years, the ratings have not been very good. Across the board, they haven't been very good, and it already seemed um, kind of overvaluated. Now they're giving for the same things. I don't think there is any increase in um, like no games are added. I think Fox still continue to broadcast 8 weeks, 8 games a week. Um, that is for that season. I cannot see their what's going forward. From what I see here, I don't think that they're gonna have um, so kind of a change of how many games, 9 broadcasts a year. If they do that, it's gonna happen a couple of years into the deal. If anything, this is a win for the NRL because the ratings, they're gonna get a boost, which is gonna make up for the lost ad revenue. They're not gonna be nearly as well thought of at the end of that TV deal in 2027. I think. Not sure if it's gonna be a decrease because I'm not sure if NRL it's gonna lose that much popularity for it to not be top. I'm not sure it's top five. I'm not look at the stats for it to be among the the most watched sports and for it to have a regular spot on national television. I don't think it will lose its national television spots and interest in 2027. This is why I don't think it will go down in value, but it will be but it will but Channel 9 it will start to lose its interest in meeting high demands from the NRL because its ratings obviously are not justifying that. They're paying for worse ratings for the same time slots. They're paying more money than they previously paid, which is not understandable. Definitely not understandable. Moving now with the Premier League. Premier League tried pay-per-view and failed miserably. What I'm talking about? Put on the stats here. So basically, pay-per-view, the Premier League has some of its games which, under the original TV deal, which was signed a year before the pandemic. As you know, games that are broadcast at 3 p.m. On Saturdays, they cannot be broadcast. I'm not sure if it's a tradition. I think it's a law. It's not a tradition. It's a law. And it cannot be broadcast. But now the Premier League finds itself in a situation where there are no people in the stands, and they have to broadcast them because otherwise nobody will see the games like at all. So those games were briefly moved on pay-per-view by Sky Sports box office and by BT Sports box office, and it was an idea given to them by the Premier League, according to BT Sports Mike Alera. This was suggested by Premier League. The price of £14.95 per game. Bear in mind, this is about $19. This is about the same as an AEW pay-per-view. It's a lot less than the top pay-per-views on pay-per-view in the United States. Oops, hold on. All right. So we have from October 27th, this is about the first 9 games. I think 2 weeks later they discussed it and they decided that we're not gonna have none of it. 14.99 is probably the price is what played the worst part of them, but it's also the games. Let's first look at what happened pretty much. So 9 games, two drew less than 10,000 viewers. Only two drew 70,000, a total average of 39,000 people, and revenue of $5.24 million, a million pounds, $6.82 million, according to BT Sport and Sky Sports. This is just enough for the whole cost to be covered, meaning that they didn't make a profit. They were about the same level at which they started. Yeah, there were rumors that it could be cut to 9.95, which was probably going to boost the demand. But there was another problem. There was another problem that I think was a lot worse. Hold on a minute. Let me. It was the fact that the games, the games where they chose were the bigger problem. I'm gonna explain. They When you're selling a pay-per-view, you're selling, obviously, when you look at the best, they've been champion at selling pay-per-views. They sell it. They have as a tagline. They have the two sides. They draw the more that like they are what draw people to buy the paper, the revenue. It should be. It does not work to be an event. For one, it does not work to be an event. This is why pay-per-view doesn't work in sports. It does not work to be an event that is broadcast uh, repeatedly over a weekend, because you have Premier League games all over the weekend, and then you kind of um, have some on pay-per-view, but the most watched are still um, the most watched are still on television. And the only way this would work, people would not pay for Crystal Palace and no, not Watford, not in the Premier League, but Crystal Palace and Wolverhampton, when they could watch Man City and Liverpool on or cheaper television. Let's put it that way. But you cannot move. The only way this would work is if you put like one game a week. If it's £15, maybe a maximum of 2 games. Oh, actually, not a week, maybe even a month. But it would still not work as well as boxing. It would still, arguably, it would still not work. But at least the expenses would be, or at least the cost would be um, easier to cover, because it's just one event that you put on a pay-per-view. It would work with the biggest, like the biggest games that you can find, like City and United, City and Liverpool. This is the only thing that would work. And as you see, not everybody's going to pay-per-views. Obviously, you see from AW, the smart decision is to have less pay-per-views in order to build up anticipation. You can see that not every boxing agency or company that works, obviously the ones that work with the biggest stars, mostly in pay-per-view, but the ones that work with like are up there but are not with the biggest stars. For example, United States, the ones that would not in any way be able to have to drive in demand, don't go to pay-per-view. And you see, two of the biggest agencies or boxing company promotions in the United States are on national television. Top rank boxing is on ESPN, for example. Premier Boxing Champions is on Fox. So those are two of the biggest biggest promotions, and they're on national television. So it's not, and they still have their events are like they have time off between them. They're, for example, once or twice in the month, so we don't have So have anticipation build up, and obviously uh, from there it's exactly up to what your main event is, because main event, no, it's not um it's not an accident at all that the main of the name of the event is literally the fight that is in the main event. um so for one, teams um that are not neither popular nor are actually good on the field don't have drawing power for them to be profitable, especially when have the bigger the bigger games on television. But in no way can you put the bigger games out of television, because a TV deal, because the television's value, your value will give you a lot more money for a product than you would earn from a pay per view. Because pay per view, when the additional price is gonna drive the demand lower, um, you're gonna have less viewership. If it's pay per view, you won't even have commercials, which means or you have limited commercials. This would mean also, with less people watching it, would mean less in ad revenue. But with demand being less, it will mean also maybe even you failing to meet the cost of production. Not cost of production, cost of the expenses that you have put into to produce the pay per view. So another way this will work with only the biggest games. It's definitely not a good move. It's definitely not a good move when you have a 20, like a league that has 10 games every round. It will not draw, and um, it will not draw, especially considering that teams um, fans of their team, the other teams are not that important. When they have to pay for this, they might not just watch it at all. But it's definitely, whatever this discussion here is, definitely no kind of of argument that this was not going to work, especially when you see the 15 pound price, when you see the games that were selected between game week 6 and game week 8. So game week 6 you have Brighton West Brom. 7 we had Wolves Crystal Palace, Burnley Chelsea, Aston Villa Southampton, Tottenham Brighton, Fulham West Bromwich Albion, Brighton in game week 8, Brighton Burnley, Crystal Palace Leeds, West Ham Fulham, West Brom Tottenham, Arsenal Aston Villa. There is not a single game. There is not a single game here that is between two good teams. There is not a single game here that is between two teams with big fan bases. Most of those teams here are between very bad teams. In terms of performance on the field, in terms of popularity, you see the only games in which the teams from the top 6 of most popular teams are involved are mismatches, meaning that they will not be close, and most people will not have interest in watching them. Like Burnley Chelsea, for this game was 3-0 Chelsea, I think. We have Tottenham Brighton, which are fighting for promotion. Tottenham, which are second in the league. You had Arsenal Aston Villa, which is a mismatch in terms of popularity. West Brom Tottenham, the same deal as the game against Brighton. If I'm not mistaken, a game maybe in week game 6, which was on pay-per-view, it was West Brom. It was not West Brom. It was Fulham. It was Fulham and Sheffield United. Both teams didn't have a single point yet. then they didn't have a single point, and they had a combined, they had 4 losses each in 4 games. They had a combined goal difference of minus 27. And this game, considering that it just being on paper trumps the demand, for it to be less profitable than it is on TV, where people don't pay, obviously, is very indicative and should be an eye opener. To sum up, I don't think with traditional sports, I don't think it can thrive with traditional sports. It only works it when you have you have to have the biggest events. You have to have the biggest event be on pay per view, but obviously that big event have to have anticipation, obviously build up. And in the end of the day, considering how valuable those TV contracts, how big those contracts right now are, I see no way that this is gonna be profitable, because they can't put big games on it, because they're gonna learn a lot. They're gonna earn a lot less than they earn from the TV deal. But if they put on bad games, the result is definitely not pleasant. Moving on to the NFL, week 12. Just a couple of games in short, just to describe. So Baltimore, let's start Baltimore Pittsburgh. Postponed for Wednesday. I might just say that. I might just say that here. It is so the Ravens. They have, from what we learned, they have 8 starters on both defense and offense that are missing. So this is in no way, and that they put, forget about the people that are put on COVID list, because most of those are contact tracing, and it is completely in the realm of imaginary that, as the doctors from the NFL, official NFL doctors have said, that you cannot transmit the virus. Apart from the fact that it's also not deadly, as the media claims it to be, you cannot transmit it while playing. Neither during your practice, and you probably won't transmit it if you have a normal conversation with a person without having your mask on. All right, this should be said. I'm tired of it. This should be said. Pittsburgh have just James Conner missing, and they have postponed it 3 times already. And even James Conner got the, I think he got it about a Sunday. He wouldn't have even been positive on Sunday. He wouldn't have been positive if there wouldn't be nearly as many as many people down the Ravens. If they had played it on Thursday, when they were supposed to play it in prime time on Thanksgiving, and from a business standpoint, it's also a pretty bad decision. I used to think that keeping your drawing stars is more important than is better than having the game played at its normal time, than having played at its normal time with guys that are not going to draw that. But that is not true. That is not true, mostly due to 2 reasons. One of the reasons is that people's fan bases are probably not going to change. They're not going to change despite who is playing at quarterback. I mean, the most Packers fans are going to watch the Packers, whether Aaron Rodgers is playing or whether Jordan Love might be actually interesting. Raiders fan will watch the Raiders, whether Derek Carr is playing or Nathan Peterman is playing. They actually got Nathan Peterman in the game against the Falcons. And the casual fan base also tends to be drawn by the popularity of the team, not the popularity of the the player. The casual fans don't know the players, by the way, and they're not that likely to learn it from the public. This is the one thing. The other thing, the second thing is that this has been proven everywhere. A game which is postponed doesn't draw well. Like, this is a phenomenon. This is like a theorem in sports broadcasting. And also, people, when you have competition, people make plans, and then they when they don't, this is why people value the games being series on television, and that's how much they value. Like, when your particular show is not in that time spot, every week, people would watch something that they know every week is on television, because people probably not going to check the guide every time. It may seem strange, but it seems strange only for people who follow it very closely. And it was everybody knows about it. It was that way in the 90s. WWF lost ratings when they were preempted, although they have the same fan base. They lost ratings when they're preempted, and also lost ratings. Yeah, exactly, because they're preempted, because the U.S. Open it preempted them to a different time slot every week. Sometimes preempted it to 9, sometimes to 9:30, sometimes to 10, sometimes even to 11. And it was pre-taped, but it goes to show that when people don't know that something is on every week at the same time, this will affect negatively this will affect viewership negatively. And it's almost the same with every single game that's been postponed this week. This year, it's been the exact same thing, unless it's postponed from one Sunday to another Sunday. And for reference, I want to bring up Kansas City and Buffalo. Sports Media Watch 2020 ratings. It was, and I have to see what. So comparing it to last year's Thursday Night Football, down 24%. Now let's see what was the previous year's Thursday Night Football in Week 6. 2019. 6. Let me just scroll down real quick. Week 7. Week 6 Thursday Night Football was Giants in New England, a game that finished by a difference of 3 touchdowns. The reigning Super Bowl champions against a very bad New England team. It was a no contest. It was not a close game that would draw. That would be interesting to people. So it's not a draw. So it's definitely not a draw. And they were down 24% of that after they were moved from Thursday to Monday. So that pretty much sums it up. And for business standpoint, it's pretty dumb. It's a pretty bad decision. They know that, by the way. From the perspective of just playing it, it's pretty dumb decision. But the NFL this is what happens when you don't have competition, because NFL teams have politicians in their pockets. It's pretty difficult for anybody to establish any kind of competition. It was the same way in 1984 when the USFL folded. And when you have no competition, you get away with everything. They got away with they literally advocated for Black Lives Matter, and they would have lost a lot of people. They would have lost a lot of people had they had competition. Like, they were losing. They lost people even without having that much competition, to be honest. And they made just to appeal to the left wing audience, which only the only logic, the only the only logic driven explanation to me is that they actually think that because it's more vocal, left wing, the actual left wing audience is the majority, but that is definitely not that way. That is definitely not NFL's majority. There's not NFL's audience is not left wing. It's conservative people who love America and who are family people. They watch the NFL with their family. They watch the NFL with their family. They're conservatives, and the NFL at that point they've lost a lot of touch. They lost touch a lot about what their audience is. Let's talk about the games that went by this week. So starting with Kansas City and Tampa Bay, which was turned out to be a pretty good game, but the Chiefs were pretty strong for a better part of it. 27-24 Chiefs, and not anything that interesting, considering I never thought the Kansas City offense would slow down, and it never actually did. Oh, by the way, Baltimore and Pittsburgh are now scheduled for tomorrow, 3:40 Eastern time, 10:40 Bulgarian time, 8:40 in the UK. Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay's defense is probably the most disappointing. Probably the thing that struggled the most compared to its usual level. But the game was pretty. Everything was pretty similar to what we already saw from those teams. Tampa Bay's defense allowed more than 500 yards, but it was still pretty strong against the ground game. Only 87 allowed yards on the ground from 20 carries from quite Edwards-Helaire, Patrick Mahomes, and Le'Veon Bell. It allowed so many yards on the air through the air, but this was inevitable considering what the Chiefs are. And the Chiefs have a lot of depth. They have a lot of efficient players. Most of the guys on their receiving core are incredibly efficient. Like Tyreek Hill caught 13 of his 15 targets, he caught 13. He had 270 yards. Travis Kelce caught 8 from 8. And they have depth, but they don't even have problems in order to need depth to cover up the problems of their leading guys. So that's that was kind of expected, I think. I put my money on Kansas City, not figuratively, of course, but if anything, this shows that this is a very sustainable success, and that the Chiefs are, as I said, a lot better than last year. Their offense is nearly unstoppable, and the only thing that because their defense is the defense was never good. It has a possibility of declining. The only thing that would give them that would be beneficial to them, so is to move the ball more gradually. I mean, they're so explosive. They score on so few plays. This is how few they need to score on their drives. But they need to wind that clock down to give their opponents less time to score, and they might even be more productive, to be honest, that way. This is one of the reasons that they were so productive against the Chiefs, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. About the Buccaneers, they lost so much because they're playing the Chiefs. Tom Brady again, it's pretty. This is pretty similar as the New Orleans game. It's a game that probably not gonna. Um, it's not gonna be a very regular occurrence for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because Brady had just to intercept not to intercept, but he had very few interceptions um, before this game. Obviously, he had two. He had two interceptions. I think both in the first half. Um, so he has 11 interceptions on the season. Um, it's for both teams. It's pretty important to get a running game going because um, for the Chiefs would need that running game in order to become a gradual an offense that gradually runs gradually, of course. And the Buccaneers will need their running game if Tom Brady um, because Tom Brady was so important that because his game was clean, he had few turnovers, he was efficient, and because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense was going to run through the passing the passing game, he needed to be very efficient. Um, and with that many receivers, he did a great job. And I think the Buccaneers will continue their winning ways because of their defense. Because defense has been also pretty good. Their pass rush is great. They're one of the best teams against the run. Pretty similar, like the loss to the Saints in terms of repercussions, at least without um, the embarrassment that they reached against the Saints. Now I want to touch on the Falcons. The Falcons won 43-6 against the Raiders, and I've been saying this for a long time. They were 1-7 after a loss to the Detroit Lions. Then they won a Thursday night football game against the Carolina Panthers, and we discussed whether, and I outright said that they were going to come back. Now they're 4-7. They've won, I think, 2 games in a row. No, they not won 2 games. They won 4 out of their last 6. This is after the loss to the Panther. Not the loss to this is after their first game against the Panthers, which was loss. So they've won 4 out of 6. They're 4-7. I doubt that they are gonna win out, but if they continue, if they actually don't play under their potential, they could reach 8-8. It would take a lot of effort because they have the Saints, they have the Buccaneers twice, they have the Chiefs. So it's not out of the equation beating the Saints and the Buccaneers. The Chargers, I think they're gonna beat almost. This is almost a guarantee, a Joe Namath guarantee at that. And then lost to the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. This would not be enough. This would be 7-9. So they have to upset the Chiefs or the Buccaneers. Like, this is going to be a huge upset. Then again, the Falcons are very capable of that. And as we talked about their defense, looking at the numbers, was not. It had the potential of turning its season around. And for the first time it played, for the first time it held off, because most of the teams that they've played this year through the air were about the middle of the table, and Atlanta was almost ripped off by all of those teams. They weren't against the Raiders, and I still think that their defense has a lot left to be desired, because this has not been a regular occurrence for the Falcons. But it shows that it shows the level of their offense for one, is what I mean. So, and their offense, if anything, one of this is the best in the league, and it's absolutely capable of getting them back to the top, not to the top of the division, but getting them back to the playoffs. I think at least they're capable of climbing back to an 8-8 record. I doubt that. Um, I doubt that they're going to get to the playoffs. I think that an 8-8 team will not get to the playoffs from the NFC. Currently, the number 7 is 6-5, but yeah, you have number 7 is 6-5. This is the Cardinals. Um, the teams that are chasing are Vikings, Bears, San Francisco with 5 wins each. Lions and Washington and Carolina have 4 wins. And it seems like you have to have winning record in order to reach. You have to be at least 9-7 in order to reach the playoffs. Um, and are so good that they use heavy majority of their play selection they put on the pass, and they are able in terms of production distribution. They're even able to outpace that. I think about 70% of their production comes from the run, and about 56% of the play selection is leans to the pass. Also, to some extent, this has a lot to do with the rushing group being very bad, but has also a lot to do with the Falcons being great through the air. The matter of fact is that they weren't so great in this game. Just 179 yards generated through the air. If 185 total generated through the air. But they're very consistent, and if anything, I think they will be close to an 8-8 record. And to finish the show off, something I thought it was very important. This was one of the most important things that came out before the Sunday of Week 12 in the NFL. Cardinals and 49ers, they announced a triple header on the Saturday of Week 16, a triple header that was gonna have Cardinals and 49ers. And I don't remember who the home team was, but the matter of fact is that it might not matter because the 49ers are now playing in Arizona, at least for the next 2 games. I don't know about how this game will go, but this game will be shown exclusively on Amazon Prime Video and Twitch. This is for the first time in a 101-year history of the National Football League. The game is scheduled for the Saturday of Week 16 at 4:30 o'clock. And we touched on this continuously on this show. This is but to have on Amazon Prime Video and Twitch, which Twitch is not paid. Amazon Prime Video for this game in the United States, I think, is not paid, and definitely not. It's definitely not going to be more people watching it on Twitch than watching it on national television. And this just goes to show why if leagues jump very aggressively online, this will be a mistake right now. No way they can gain the revenue from an online platform such as Twitch and Amazon Prime Video at that as they can from national television. The only way for it to work as long as Twitch is free, and Amazon Prime Video obviously will be free, is for as much people to watch Twitch, to be on Twitch, than to watch national television, which I think we're a lot more years off than the sector obviously thinks. But I don't think that I don't think that a more aggressive jump is likely to happen. But it's interesting. This game, interesting to see what the repercussions of this game is going to be, because no way you're going to be, no way you're going to be even close to what you usually reach financially through Amazon Prime Video and Twitch. So yeah, but this is gonna be at least interesting. We'll see the financial repercussions, and a lot more at least how aggressive the NFL should go. A couple of years ago, there were rumored that they might want that they might be interested in signing with Amazon Prime Video for an exclusive online game. For exclusive online, it was a time slot, which is definitely not gonna happen in the near future. But now now we have an exclusive game, and it's gonna be very interesting how that what happens. But this is 4 weeks away. Thanks for watching the seventh episode of the Last Mistake podcast. Don't forget to subscribe for Home Run BG on YouTube, as well as Spotify, or as well as the podcast on Spotify or iTunes or Overcast or whatever platform you're listening to us. Hope you liked our latest episode, and be sure to check out our podcast every Sunday night on every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Bulgarian time, 2 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, and 7 o'clock in the United Kingdom. Thanks for watching. We'll see you with the next week's edition. Goodbye.